email arrived at 8:12 a.m., right when I was pouring my second coffee. Due to restructuring, your position has been terminated effective immediately. My hands froze before the mug even touched the table. I stared at the screen while 23 unread work alerts exploded across my phone. After 11 years of building the company's entire cloud system, they replaced me with a college intern who earned less than my monthly internet bill. Her name was Lily Harper, 22 years old, smiling in every LinkedIn photo like life had never hit her once. The CEO called her the future of innovation during the company-wide meeting where he erased me like I never existed. Then came the line that burned itself into my memory forever. "Anyone can maintain servers these days," my manager laughed, while security escorted me out carrying a cardboard box. I walked through the parking lot feeling like the world had ripped my spine out. But deep inside, something felt wrong because nobody could learn a $50 million infrastructure in 3 days. The company's entire medical database ran on a fragile custom architecture I designed myself. One wrong configuration could shut down hospitals, emergency services, and millions of patient records within minutes. I had begged leadership for months to approve critical upgrades before disaster struck. Instead, they spent the budget on flashy marketing campaigns and a Gen Z modernization initiative. 3 days after I was fired, I woke up to 27 missed calls before sunrise. Half the calls came from former coworkers who had ignored me for years. I almost didn't answer until I saw Marcus calling again and again. Marcus never panicked, which meant whatever happened was catastrophic. "Emma," he whispered the second I picked up, "the main servers are down." Behind his voice, alarms screamed so loudly it sounded like a hospital evacuation. I sat upright instantly, my stomach tightening like a knot pulled by steel wires. "How bad?" I asked, already knowing the answer would change everything. "The backup clusters failed too," Marcus said shakily. "Lily pushed a system-wide update last night and now nothing responds." My heartbeat slowed instead of racing because I suddenly understood everything. The update touched the legacy authentication framework nobody besides me fully understood. I had built that framework during the pandemic, after ransomware attacks nearly destroyed the company. The encryption layers were so complicated that even senior engineers avoided touching them. Marcus inhaled sharply before saying the number that made my blood run cold. "The outage is already costing nearly $2 million an hour." News channels started reporting system failures across hospitals before noon. Patients couldn't access records, pharmacies froze, and emergency scheduling systems crashed across 3 states. I muted the television and stared silently at my apartment wall for a long time. Part of me felt angry, but another part felt deeply betrayed by people who once called me family. At 2 p.m., my former CEO appeared outside my apartment building in a black SUV. The same man who fired me now looked 20 years older than he had last week. He removed his sunglasses with trembling fingers while trying to fake confidence. "Emma, we need your help," he said quietly, like the sentence physically hurt him. I crossed my arms and remembered every meeting where they dismissed my warnings. "You said anyone could maintain the servers," I replied, without inviting him inside. His jaw tightened as traffic noises echoed through the parking lot between us. "This is bigger than personal feelings now," he muttered. I laughed once because that sentence always appeared when powerful people lost control. Funny how loyalty only mattered after the building started burning. He offered me my old salary back immediately. Then he doubled it when I started closing the apartment door. Still, I shook my head slowly while watching panic spread across his face. "No amount of money fixes disrespect," I told him. That evening, Marcus secretly sent me screenshots from inside headquarters. Executives were screaming at each other while investors threatened lawsuits worth hundreds of millions. Lily sat alone near the operations room with tears running down her face. For the first time, I stopped seeing her as the enemy. She wasn't malicious or arrogant like the executives above her. She was simply inexperienced and thrown into a war she never understood. Around midnight, another message arrived directly from Lily herself. "I'm sorry," it read. "They told me the system was easy." I stared at her message longer than expected before replying. "Meet me at the office in 30 minutes. Don't tell anyone." The building looked completely different when I returned through the front entrance. Fear had replaced the arrogance that once poisoned every hallway upstairs. Screens flashed red warning signals across the operations center. Engineers looked exhausted, pale, and terrified as millions disappeared every passing hour. Lily stood near the server room holding a laptop with shaking hands. The confidence from her company introduction video was completely gone now. break anything," she whispered immediately after seeing me. "They forced me to deploy changes before testing was complete." I nodded, because I already suspected leadership pushed impossible deadlines again. Companies loved gambling with disaster, as long as quarterly profits looked beautiful. Together, we entered the freezing, cold server room filled with endless blinking lights. The smell of overheating hardware instantly brought back memories of sleepless nights and sacrificed weekends. I opened the diagnostic console and felt my chest tighten instantly. Someone had overwritten the security bridge connecting all regional databases together. "That command shouldn't even exist," I murmured while scanning corrupted logs carefully. Lily swallowed nervously and admitted the CTO gave her direct administrator access on day 1. The room went completely silent after that confession. Giving unrestricted access to an untrained intern was beyond reckless. It was corporate suicide. For the next 6 hours, I rebuilt critical pathways line by line manually. Lily watched closely while taking notes like her future depended on every word I spoke. At sunrise, the first recovery alert finally appeared across the monitors. One hospital system came back online, followed by another 5 minutes later. Cheers exploded throughout the operations center loud enough to shake the walls. Some employees actually started crying from relief after nearly 20 hours of chaos. The CEO rushed toward me smiling like we were suddenly best friends again. But before he could speak, I held up my hand to stop him. "This outage wasn't caused by one intern," I said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "It happened because leadership ignored expertise and worshipped cheap labor." Nobody argued, because every exhausted face in that room knew I was right. The silence felt heavier than any screaming match ever could. Later that afternoon, investors forced an emergency executive meeting behind closed doors. 3 senior leaders, including the CTO, resigned before sunset hit the city skyline. Lily approached me afterward holding a resignation letter with trembling fingers. "I should leave too," she said softly while avoiding eye contact. I looked at the exhausted young woman standing in front of me carefully. She reminded me of myself years ago before corporations taught me how disposable people become. "You made mistakes," I admitted honestly while closing her resignation folder. "But they used you as a shield for their own stupidity." Her eyes widened slightly like nobody had defended her before. For a moment, she looked less like an employee and more like a terrified kid. The board offered me a massive contract to rebuild the entire infrastructure from scratch. This time, I demanded full authority, written protections, and triple my previous salary. They signed everything within an hour, without negotiating a single sentence. Nothing humbles executives faster than losing $50 million overnight. Months later, the company slowly recovered under completely new leadership. Security systems improved, engineers gained real authority, and reckless shortcuts finally disappeared. Lily stayed on my team after completing proper training and certification programs. She worked harder than anyone because failure had burned lessons deeply into her heart. One evening, she asked me something while we monitored the upgraded servers together. "Did you ever want revenge after they fired you?" I smiled slightly while watching stable green lights glow across the room. "Revenge feels good for a moment," I answered, "but survival feels good forever." The company once thought experience was too expensive to keep around. Then one cheap decision nearly destroyed everything they spent decades building. And every time executives now discuss cutting corners to save money, someone always repeats my name quietly. Because the day they replaced me with a cheap intern became the day their entire empire almost collapsed forever.